The fall is not the end. Did you fall? It doesn't mean it's all over. It just means you need to get up again. Relapse, however painful, is not the end point of your journey. It's just a comma. And if you learn to deal with it, it can become the moment when your discipline grows stronger. The truth is harsh, but it needs to be said. All warriors fall. No man crosses the battlefield without scars. No athlete wins medals without stumbles. No philosopher finds wisdom without first knowing their own weaknesses. Falling is part of the process. What separates those who win from those who give up is not the absence of falls, but how they get up after them. The problem is that, for many, relapse turns into a death sentence. The man falls and immediately enters a dark cycle: guilt, shame, self-punishment. And it is precisely this cycle that destroys. It's not the fall itself, but the poison that comes after. And if you learn to break this cycle, each relapse can cease to be a tragedy and turn into a lesson. In this episode, we will walk together through this delicate but necessary theme. First, you will understand how the relapse cycle works, from the trigger that ignites the desire to the fall itself, to the shame that paralyzes, to the destructive thought that leads many to give up altogether. Then we will expose the common mistake of self-destruction, this mania of punishing oneself in excess, as if shame were the solution. Next, we will learn to reframe the fall, transforming each slip into learning, not into a sentence. You will also discover the psychological impact of getting up quickly, because the brain learns with repetition. If you fall and give up, it registers, "I can't." But if you fall and get up, it registers, "I continue despite the fall." This difference changes destinies. We will bring real examples of men who fell several times before winning to show that relapses do not nullify past victories. And we're not going to stop there. I will share immediate strategies for after the fall, practical weapons like a cold shower, leaving the environment and recording the triggers. We will dismantle the trap of the "it's over" thought and show that a fall doesn't have to turn into a storm. You will learn to identify triggers, review your mistakes, and create a plan to avoid repeating them. All of this will be tempered with Stoic philosophy. Falling is not failure, giving up is. And I will remind you that each new beginning is, in fact, an act of courage. Victory does not belong to the perfect, but to the persevering. And before we dive into all of this, I need you. Subscribe to the channel now. This daily series is like armor that you wear every day. Without it, you are vulnerable. With it, you strengthen yourself with each episode. Click and become part of this legion of men who have chosen to fight. And I want you to reflect even before we continue. How many times have you already sunk because you believed that the fall was the end? How many days of discipline have you lost not because of the relapse itself, but because you gave up after it? Think about it. Because at the end of this video, you will realize that the fall can be just another step on the path to your victory. The relapse cycle. Most men describe relapse as if it were an isolated event. I fell yesterday. But in fact, it almost never happens out of nowhere. What we call a fall is just the last step of an entire process, a cycle that starts long before the moment you type anything on the screen. And it is precisely because they do not see this process that so many remain trapped, repeating the same mistakes without realizing that the battle was lost long before the last scene. Relapse is not a lightning bolt that falls suddenly. It is a predictable sequence of steps. It all starts with a trigger. Sometimes it's boredom at the end of the day, stress after work, loneliness when arriving home, frustration after an argument, or accumulated fatigue. It can even be a micro-stimulus, such as an innocent image, an advertisement, a memory that seems to arise out of nowhere. The brain, conditioned, associates these states with a quick solution: dopamine. The trigger is not your fault, but it is always the first fork in the road. You don't choose to be bored, but you choose what you do with it. Next comes the fantasy. This is when the mind begins to project memories of the relief that pornography has brought before. In the beginning, it is not an explicit scene, but an outline, an invitation. Keywords arise, old images are reactivated. The body responds, breathing shortens, curiosity disguises itself as just a look. Here, the broad vision of the rational brain narrows, and you begin to act almost on autopilot. Then appears the internal negotiation. It is the voice that says, "Today was tough, I deserve it. It will be just a little bit. I've endured enough, it's okay." It's not logical reasoning, it's bargaining. And every bargain is an open door to habit. When you start to justify yourself, you are already sliding down the ramp. Just today is the favorite lie of relapse. From there, the ritual arises. Those who have already fallen know this choreography by heart. Close the door, adjust the chair, turn off the lights, open tabs, put on headphones, activate incognito mode. Each detail reduces the friction between intention and act. The ritual is dangerous because by repeating it, you reduce your chances of retreating. That's why many experts recommend breaking the pattern right at this point. Get up, turn on the lights, leave the room, take a cold shower. Not because the shower is magical, but because it destroys the choreography that prepares the ground. And then comes the fall. The act itself lasts a few minutes. But notice, at this moment almost everything had already been decided back there. When you let the fantasy run wild, when you listened to the bargain, when you entered the ritual. The act is just the climax of a play that started long before. It's not an excuse, it's anatomy of habit. The brain walks on the tracks that you yourself have left ready. Soon after appears the short relief. The body dumps dopamine and endogenous opioids. You relax for a few minutes. It seems like it solved something, but in fact it only anesthetized the initial discomfort. The boredom, the loneliness, the stress are still there, and now they are accompanied by guilt, and the guilt arrives quickly. I failed. I threw away my count. I'll never be able to. It is at this point that many give up. The guilt weighs, suffocates, turns into shame. And shame seeks hiding. Isolation arises. You avoid looking in the eyes, cancel plans, stop answering messages. This isolation is dangerous because it cuts the social brakes that could hold you back. Alone with shame, it is much easier to fall again. To alleviate the guilt comes the empty promise, "Tomorrow I'll make up for it. I'll never do this again. Now it will." But without a real plan, this promise is nothing more than moral fantasy. It gives a false sense of control for a few hours, but it does not prevent the cycle from restarting. And when it restarts, you are weaker, more tired, more irritable. That's when any micro-stimulus becomes a trigger again. The circuit restarts, and often the person falls 2, 3, 4 times in a row, the famous domino effect. Notice the drawing. What seemed like an isolated act is, in fact, a circuit, and circuits are reinforced with each repetition. The more you go through the sequence, the more automatic it becomes. The real enemy is not the fall itself, but the process that manufactures the fall. If you think that the battle happens only in the last instant, you will look for willpower only there, and you will lose wars that were already decided long before. There is also another subtle detail. This cycle feeds on the all-or-nothing thought. The mind says, "If I can't be perfect, I'm trash." And since no one is perfect, this belief becomes fuel for giving up. The man falls, calls himself a failure, and concludes that it is no longer worth trying. It is the fertile ground for chain relapse. The way out begins when you name the steps. Naming is disarming. When you say, "I'm fantasizing," "I'm negotiating with myself," "I'm entering the ritual," you create space to act before the end. This awareness is like turning on the light in the middle of an ambush. You see the trap and can choose another path. That's why it's so important to understand the engineering of relapse. You stop fighting only in the last minute and start intervening from the first step. Instead of asking, "Why did I fall?" you start asking yourself, "Where did the sequence begin?" This change transforms a diffuse shame into an intervention map, and in any war, having a map is better than relying only on blind courage. Think of your week as a board. The triggers are houses with traps. The fantasy is a fog that covers exits. The ritual are slippery trails that always lead to the same end. Your job is not to walk blindly, hoping not to stumble. Your job is to redesign the board, change routines, remove accesses, move the cell phone at night, fill time gaps with simple tasks, arrange a quick check-in with someone. This is not a lack of freedom, it's engineering of freedom. And here is the most important point. None of this was written to accuse you, it was written to equip you. When you understand that your relapse had a script, you discover that you can rewrite that script. That's the key. The cycle is not destiny, it is just a pattern, and patterns can be broken. The mistake of self-destruction. After the fall, many men do not stop only at regret. They go further, diving into an even deeper abyss, that of self-destruction. This is the most common mistake, and also the most expensive, because the relapse itself is already painful, but the way you react to it can turn a simple slip into an avalanche. The pattern is almost always the same. First comes the guilt. I failed. Then the shame. I'm trash. And soon after, the condemnation. I'll never be able to. This type of thinking does not fix anything, it only paralyzes. It's as if you fell on the floor and instead of getting up, started hitting yourself for being fallen. The result is not discipline, but more pain. This self-destruction is dangerous because it feeds exactly the cycle that you need to break. When the mind is filled with shame, the heart seeks hiding. You isolate yourself, avoid people, cancel appointments, dive into silence. And silence becomes an ally of relapse because it takes away from you the small social anchors that could prevent the next fall. It's like turning off all the alarms of a besieged city. In addition, shame distorts identity. You stop thinking I made a mistake and start believing I am the mistake. This difference seems small, but it is devastating. When you believe that the fall defines who you are, you lose the strength to fight. Because whoever sees himself as a failure stops trying. Whoever believes that he is a prisoner accepts the chains as a natural part of life. It is here that many men give up the journey, not because they relapsed, but because they convinced themselves that they have no value. Self-destruction is, in practice, voluntary surrender. You yourself become your own executioner, and the addiction thanks you because it does not need to make more effort. You have already given up on yourself. But stop to reflect. How many times have you already fallen in other areas of life and got up? How many times have you stumbled learning something new, making mistakes at work, failing in a relationship, and still continued? Why then? Do you believe that in the fight against pornography it should be different? If in everything in life the fall is part of learning, why here would it be a death sentence? The Stoics taught that the mistake is not a reason for despair, but for training. Marcus Aurelius said that the stone in the road is not there to destroy you, but to train your ability to jump. This vision changes everything. Because the relapse can be seen as a stone, but it can also be seen as a teacher. And if you see the mistake as a lesson, self-destruction loses its strength. The key is to understand. Shame paralyzes, but responsibility liberates. Guilt says, I am a failure. Responsibility says, I failed, but I can correct. Guilt takes you away from action. Responsibility pushes you to the next step. The difference is that guilt looks back, while responsibility looks forward. Therefore, if you have recently fallen, do not add fuel to the fire. Do not destroy yourself from within. Do not feed thoughts that only reinforce the chains. What you need is clarity and action. Clarity to name what happened, action to correct what can be corrected. It's simple, but powerful. Do not be complicit with the addiction by hitting yourself. Be an ally of your freedom by learning from the fall. And now I want to provoke you. How many times have you already mistreated yourself more than the mistake itself? How many times was your internal punishment more cruel than the relapse itself? Answer with sincerity, because admitting this is the first step to break this silent habit of destroying yourself after the fall. Reframing the fall. Most men face relapse as if it were a tombstone, the end of the journey, the definitive proof that they were not born to win. This is the biggest mistake, because the fall does not have to be a death sentence. It can be reframed as part of the training. The difference is in how you interpret what happened. When you see the fall only as a failure, everything becomes heavy. The automatic thought is, I lost everything, nothing was worth it, I threw away my count. But the truth is that the time of discipline has not disappeared. Each day of resistance left marks on your brain, strengthened connections, trained your will. The learning does not erase. A fall does not invalidate the path you have already traveled. What changes is how you react. If you react with despair, the fall becomes prison. If you react with lucidity, the fall becomes teacher. It's like falling during a workout. You can curse, throw everything away and give up the gym, or you can get up, analyze why you slipped, and adjust the movement to not repeat the mistake. A stumble can be just a detail, or it can be the end, and this choice depends on you. Reframing the fall means looking at it with the eyes of a strategist, not a victim. It is asking, what did this mistake show me? What was the trigger that caught me by surprise? At what point in the sequence could I have acted differently? What signs did I ignore? Each answer is a map that increases your chances of winning in the next battle. The Stoics were masters at doing this. They did not deny human stumbles, but transformed each failure into study material. For them, life is not about not making mistakes, but about learning quickly from mistakes. Marcus Aurelius wrote to himself, "When you are knocked down, get up with more strength and continue. The fall is not an enemy, it is part of the path." This thought is crucial for the fight against pornography, because the relapse is not just a chemical slip, it is a mirror. It shows where your defense is still weak, where your routine still has gaps, where your mind still believes in lies. If you reframe, you transform this mirror into a tool. Instead of condemning yourself, you investigate. Instead of giving up, you strengthen yourself. Think of a warrior in training. He does not learn to fight by winning all the simulations. He learns by falling, taking blows, recognizing posture failures, correcting strategies. The same applies here. Each fall can be a scar or it can be a war manual. The scar remembers the pain. The manual teaches how not to be hit next time. The danger is in believing that the fall is a certificate of incapacity. This is a lie. The fall is just information. It is up to you to decide what you will do with it, whether you will use it as evidence against yourself or as a resource in your favor. And here is a practical exercise. Next time you fall, instead of writing failure in your diary, write 3 things you learned. It could be, I need to sleep earlier. I can't have the cell phone in bed. When I feel anxious, I should go for a walk. Transform the fall into data, because data can be used to plan. Guilt cannot. Reframing the fall does not mean justifying nor accepting the mistake as normal. It means extracting from it what can make you stronger. It is soldier discipline. Even from defeat, he takes ammunition. And now I want to ask you, if you could look at your last relapse as a teacher and not as an enemy, what would it have tried to teach you? This answer can completely change the way you see your process. The psychological effect of starting over. There is a detail that many ignore after a fall: the impact that the decision to get up quickly has on the brain. What you do in the first hours after the relapse determines whether your mind registers, I am incapable, or I continue despite the failure. This record is powerful because it shapes the way you see yourself. The brain is a pattern machine. It learns with repetition. When you fall and spend days sinking into guilt, loneliness, and empty promises, you are teaching your brain that the rule is to give up. It records, I can't, and next time the temptation appears, the mind will already look for this history as a reference. The addiction loves this environment because it feeds on despair. But when you fall and decide to get up quickly, the record changes. You are not denying the fall, but you are teaching the brain that it does not define your destiny. It's as if you said, yes, I failed, but I continue. This type of decision reinforces discipline instead of fragility. And the more times you repeat this movement of getting up, the more the brain learns that it does not matter how many times it falls, there will always be a return. This psychological effect is comparable to an athlete in training. Imagine someone who stumbles during the race. If he sits on the floor, gives up the training, and spends days without returning to the track, the body records laziness. But if he stumbles, gets up, and finishes the race, the body learns that stumbles do not nullify the training. The same happens in the fight against pornography. Getting up quickly teaches resilience, and there is something even deeper. When you decide to start over right after the fall, your identity does not crystallize in the word failure. You create a contrast within yourself, a moment of weakness followed immediately by a gesture of strength. This contrast is what strengthens confidence, because confidence is not born from never falling, but from knowing that you can always get up. Stoic philosophy reinforces this vision. For them, virtue is not in living without failures, but in transforming each failure into an exercise of discipline. Epictetus said, "It does not matter how many times you are knocked down, but how many times you get up." This is the spirit. Each new beginning is proof that you are greater than your fall. What many do not realize is that starting over immediately reduces the space for the negative spiral. By getting up on the same day, you cut the domino effect, that pattern in which one fall pulls another, and, when you least expect it, the entire week has been lost. The act of getting up quickly puts a barrier in this avalanche. It's as if you drove a stake into the ground and said, "It does not pass from here." And it's not just psychological, it's biological too. The more time you spend immersed in guilt, the more dopamine plummets, the more serotonin is drained, the more you feel apathetic. This chemistry of giving up leaves you vulnerable to new falls. Starting over soon works like a shock. It interrupts the chemical cycle and redirects the energy. It is action that disarms the neurochemistry of addiction. Therefore, when you fall, do not wait days to act. Make the day of the fall the day of the restart. Do not throw away the previous victories. Do not think that everything was lost. Nothing was lost. Each day that you resisted before is inside you, recorded in your body and in your mind. You do not go back to zero, you continue the journey. And here goes the provocation. The last time you fell, how long did it take to get up? Hours, days, weeks. And if you had started over immediately, how would your story have been different? Think about it. Because the difference between slavery and freedom may be in the interval between the mistake and the decision to start over. Real examples. When we talk about relapse, it is easy to imagine that only you face this struggle. The mind whispers, "No one else falls like I fall. Only I am weak to this point." But this is a convenient lie of addiction, because the truth is that thousands of men in all ages, in all places of the world, have already passed through the same road. And many of them only conquered victory after stumbling countless times. A young man told me that he tried to stop more than 20 times. He started the journey at 18, motivated, confident, full of energy. He fell after a week. He tried again. He fell on the 10th day. He tried again. He fell on the 3rd. It was years in this cycle, until one day he decided that each fall would be studied as if it were a training. He stopped saying, "I failed," and started saying, "I learned one more detail about myself." This change of mentality made the difference. Today, at 25, he collects clean months, not because he never fell, but because he never gave up getting up. Another man, already 40 years old, carried decades of habit. For him, pornography was an almost daily routine since adolescence. When he decided to stop, he fell hundreds of times. Each fall was accompanied by the feeling that it was too late, that there was no hope. But he realized something simple. Each time he got up, even weak, he was accumulating resistance, like a muscle that strengthens not in comfort, but in pain. Today, he looks back and says, "The falls were part of my liberation. Because it was falling that I learned to get up." There is also the story of a young student who carried silent shame. He started writing in a notebook every time he fell, the day, the hour, the trigger, what he felt. After months, he noticed a pattern. He always relapsed at specific times, always when he was alone in the room at night, always after days of stress. With this map, he managed to reorganize his routine. He started sleeping earlier, moved the cell phone, included nightly walks. The result? Increasingly rare falls, until finally, discipline won. These examples show something fundamental. The relapse does not erase the previous victories. It does not invalidate your progress. Each day resisted has already strengthened your mind, and each restart strengthens even more. The mistake only becomes definitive when you transform it into giving up. The great winners were not those who never fell, but those who made the falls part of the process. Think of a warrior in training. He does not become invincible because he was never hit, but because each blow received was transformed into a lesson. The body keeps scars, but the soul keeps wisdom. The same applies to you. Your victory will not be measured by the absence of falls, but by the sum of the times in which you chose to get up. Each time you refuse to give up, you send a clear message to the addiction. I am not your slave. I continue, no matter how many times I stumble. And here I want to provoke you. What was the last time you fell and decided to get up, even without believing in yourself? What was the result of this choice? Maybe you have not realized it, but each of these small decisions built the man you are becoming. Immediate strategies post-relapse. After the fall, the most dangerous moment is not the relapse itself, but the hours that immediately follow. It is in this interval that the addiction usually takes deeper root, because the brain, still intoxicated by artificial dopamine, becomes vulnerable. Many call this the gray post-orgasm, that state of apathy, shame, and confusion in which nothing seems to make sense. It is here that the cycle decides whether it will continue or be interrupted. Most men in this state surrender to inertia. They lie down, wallow in guilt, and open the same screens again. And so instead of being just one fall, it turns into a domino effect of several. That's why immediate action is crucial. It's not about waiting for the urge to pass, but about acting before it multiplies. The first strategy is simple. Change the physical environment immediately. If you fell in the bedroom, get up, leave the room. Go to the living room, to the street, to the bathroom, anywhere that breaks the ritual. This change is not just symbolic, it's neurological. The brain associates environments with behaviors. Staying in the same place is like sitting in the trap again. The second strategy is physical shock. Many men report that a cold shower immediately after relapse is like pressing a reset button. It's not a miracle, but it's physiology. The cold water activates the sympathetic nervous system, awakens the body, and breaks the state of lethargy. It's like saying to the brain, "It's over, we're starting again." The third is to record the trigger. Take paper and pen and write. What led me here? Was it boredom? Was it stress? Was it loneliness? Was it being on my cell phone at night? This writing is not punishment, it's diagnosis. Each time you record, you create a map, and maps show where the traps are. Without this record, the relapse becomes an unexplained fog. With the record, it becomes a lesson. Another powerful tactic is to seek immediate movement. Get up, do push-ups, walk fast, go for a run. The body was designed to respond to movement. Remaining still is surrendering to apathy. Movement redirects energy and helps burn off excess artificial dopamine. And here's one of the most important. Don't hide your fall. Isolation is the fertilizer of relapse. If you have a trusted friend, a group, a community, share. Say, "I fell, but I'm getting up now." This simple act destroys the power of shame, because shame only exists in the dark. When you expose it, the current loses strength. The goal of these strategies is not to erase the fall, but to prevent it from growing. It is to turn a stumble into just that, a stumble, without letting it turn into an avalanche. Think of the soldier who, when hit in combat, bleeds. He has two options. He can lie on the ground and wait for death, or he can quickly staunch the wound and continue fighting. The difference between the two destinies is not in the blow, but in the immediate response. And I want to ask you, which of these strategies will you apply next time? Will you get up and change your environment? Will you take a cold shower? Will you record the trigger? Will you seek movement? Or will you shut up and let the relapse grow? Your choice at this moment is worth more than the fall itself. Avoiding the "what's the point" effect. There is a psychological trap that destroys more men than the relapse itself, the famous "what's the point" effect. It starts with a seemingly innocent phrase, "I've already fallen, so it doesn't matter." This small concession opens the doors to a sequence of even more devastating falls. It's as if the brain said, "I lost the war, so I'm going to enjoy the disaster." But the truth is that you haven't lost the war, you just lost a battle. The "what's the point" is dangerous because it turns an isolated slip into a pattern. The man falls once and instead of getting up decides to sink. "Since I did it, I'm going to continue all day today. Tomorrow I'll start again." This thought creates the feeling of license to exaggerate. It's as if a small crack in the hull of a ship were ignored, and suddenly the water invades, sinking everything. It wasn't the crack that sank the boat, but the choice not to act in the face of it. This effect also feeds on the mentality of perfectionism. Many believe that the journey needs to be an impeccable straight line. And when that line is broken, the radical thought arises, I've already ruined everything, so it's not worth continuing. But those who think like this forget that discipline is not perfection. Discipline is persistence. The winner is not the one who never falls, but the one who refuses to turn a fall into giving up. To combat the "what's the point?" it is necessary to change the internal narrative. The question should not be "how much have I lost?" but "how much can I still save?" If you fell once in the day, you can get up and still save the next 23 hours. If you fell in the week, you can save the days that remain. The fall does not define the whole. The whole is defined by the sum of the following choices. Another point, the "what's the point?" feeds on postponement. The mind says, "Tomorrow I'll start again." This postponement is poison because it teaches the brain to accept procrastination as normal. The most effective way to break this logic is to start again immediately. Not tomorrow, not next Monday, not after feeling better. Now. The antidote against the "what's the point?" is there's still time. And there is also the biological aspect. Each relapse generates a chemical cascade that weakens self-control. The more time you spend immersed in repeated falls, the more the brain reinforces connections of dependence. It's like digging a deeper and deeper hole, but if you interrupt quickly, you can prevent the hole from turning into a cave. Think of a fire. A single spark can be extinguished with a glass of water, but if you say "what's the point, let it burn," in minutes you will have an entire forest in flames. The same happens with relapse. A spark can be contained, but if you give your body and mind to the "what's the point" effect, you lose control of the fire. And here, I want to leave a clear reminder. You haven't lost everything. You never lose everything. Each day, one before the fall, left a trace in you. The learning has not disappeared. The discipline has not evaporated. Nothing was in vain. What changes the course is not the fall, but the choice that comes after it. Therefore, the next time the mind whispers, "What's the point?" answer firmly, "No, there's still time." This simple answer can save days, weeks, even months of discipline. It can save your energy, your confidence, your identity. And now I want to ask you, how many times have you turned a slip into a storm because you believed that "what's the point?" How many times could you have gotten up on the same day but chose to sink for weeks? Reflect with sincerity, because the victory you seek does not depend on never falling. It depends on never accepting that everything is over. How to identify triggers of error. If you really want to win this war, you need to learn to track the triggers that precede the fall. Because no one falls out of nowhere. Relapse is not bad luck, it's not chance, it's not destiny. It has roots. And these roots are the triggers, those stimuli or situations that open the door to the cycle. Identifying them is like discovering the enemy infiltrated in your camp. The first step is to map when the fall happens. There are men who always fall at night, others in the early morning, others on days off. The time matters because it reveals moments of greater vulnerability. If you realize that you almost always stumble at night, there's no point in insisting on being alone with your cell phone in the room. You need to change the terrain of the battle. The second step is to observe where it happens. For many, it's always in the same environment. The dark room, the empty living room, the bathroom with the cell phone in hand. The brain associates places with behaviors. If you ignore this connection, you continue to put yourself in traps. It's like an alcoholic who insists on passing in front of the bar. The third step is to understand why it happens. Here enter the emotional states: loneliness, stress, anxiety, boredom, frustration. Pornography works as a valve of escape for poorly managed emotions. It's not just about physical desire, it's about anesthetizing feelings. If you don't name the why, you never attack the root, you only cut branches that grow back. A practical technique is the trigger diary. Write immediately after the fall. What time was it? Where were you? What did you feel before? What were you doing minutes before falling? In a short time, you will begin to notice patterns. Maybe you always relapse on Sunday nights when you feel empty. Maybe always after fights at work. Maybe always in moments of procrastination. This map is gold. It doesn't erase the error, but reveals where the enemy enters. Another important point is to identify who or what is linked to the trigger. It may be following certain people on social networks, consuming certain seemingly innocent content, maintaining applications that always become an entry point. Addiction takes advantage of these subtle loopholes. Cutting these accesses is not exaggeration, it's war strategy. The Stoics would say that recognizing the trigger is half the victory. Epictetus advised, when you perceive that something excites your mind in a disorderly way, flee as from fire. It's applied wisdom. If you know that something ignites desire, don't keep testing your resistance. Get away. The truly strong is not the one who plays with temptation, but the one who avoids it with intelligence. Identifying triggers also helps to disarm the surprise effect. Many men fall because they believe that temptation arose out of nowhere. But when you know the triggers, you realize that nothing is out of nowhere. Everything follows a script. And when you see the script, you can write different endings. And now I want you to reflect. What are the 3 most frequent triggers in your life? When was the last time you fell and realized afterwards that the signs were clear? If you don't answer these questions, you will continue to stumble in the same places. But if you answer, you will have already taken a giant step towards freedom. We have reached a decisive point in this reflection, the way you see your own falls. So far, we have talked about the cycle of relapse, about the error of self-destruction, about the importance of re-signifying, and about the power of starting again quickly. We have also seen practical strategies and ways to identify triggers. But now I want you to look inside and do something that few have the courage to do. Transform your experience into a lesson, not only for yourself, but for others who are in the same struggle. There is a special power when you put into words what you have learned. While the relapse remains only in your head, it mixes with shame and silence. But when you talk about it honestly, even in a few sentences, it ceases to be a secret and becomes a tool. That's why today's question is so important. I want you to answer in the comments, what was the biggest lesson you learned from a relapse? It can be simple. Maybe you realized that sleeping late is your biggest enemy. Maybe you understood that cell phone in the room is poison. Maybe you noticed that anxiety and stress are almost automatic triggers. Or maybe you realized that what destroys is not falling, but giving up. Any sincere answer is already a weapon, for you and for others who read. And don't underestimate the impact of this. When you share your lesson, another man can read and think, I'm not alone. Someone can avoid a fall because you decided to expose yours. This current of courage creates an invisible but real community. Each comment becomes a reminder that this war is not fought in total silence, but in alliance. The Stoics taught the importance of confession to oneself. Marcus Aurelius wrote in his diaries to expose his weaknesses before his own eyes. He didn't write to be read, but to remember that he wasn't perfect and that he needed to grow every day. When you write your lesson in the comments, you are doing exactly that, transforming fall into wisdom, pain into discipline. Therefore, do not let this question pass in blank. Reflect and answer. What was the biggest lesson you learned from a relapse? It can be a short sentence, it can be a deep thought. The important thing is that it is true. And if you still feel resistance, remember, silencing only strengthens shame. Speaking frees. When you write, you assume public commitment. And public commitment is one of the strongest antidotes against the cycle of relapse. So do it now. Write, mark your lesson, transform your pain into a map for another warrior. The philosophy of resilience. For the Stoics, the real failure was never to fall. The real failure was always to give up. This vision is fundamental because it completely changes the way you see the fight against pornography. While many believe that victory depends on never stumbling, ancient philosophy teaches that victory belongs to those who refuse to abandon the battlefield, even after being hit. Epictetus said, "It is not what happens to you that matters, but how you react to what happens." This phrase could be written on every wall of your room, because what destroys the man is not the fall itself, but the interpretation he makes of it. He who falls and decides never to get up again is already defeated. But he who falls and gets up proves each time that he is still greater than his weakness. Resilience is exactly that, the ability to endure, to absorb the blow, to continue even wounded. It's like steel tempered in fire. The more blows it receives, the more resistant it becomes. Resilience is not absence of pain, but ability to transform pain into fuel. In the fight against pornography, this philosophy needs to be applied in every day. Because there will be easy days, and there will be days when temptation will seem unbearable. There will be moments when you will fall, and it is in these moments that resilience is revealed. You can look at yourself and say, "I am weak, I can't, I will give up." Or you can choose the Stoic speech, "Yes, I fell, but I continue." Because discipline does not end in the fall, it begins in the restart. Think of the ancient warriors. They did not become feared because they were never injured. They became legendary because even injured, they advanced. Their scars were marks of resilience. Each cut was a memory that they had not given up. You also carry invisible scars. They are falls, failures, dark nights. But if each of them is used as a reminder that you continued, then they are not marks of shame. They are war medals. This philosophy also corrects the idea of perfection. Many men believe that freedom will only come when they manage to be impeccable, when they never make mistakes again. But perfection does not exist. What exists is persistence. What exists is constancy. And it is precisely this constancy that transforms a slave into a free man. Marcus Aurelius wrote in his diaries that the art of living is more like fighting than dancing. The fight is full of stumbles, imbalances, improvisations. But the resilient fighter always returns to the guard, always gets up, always continues. This is the metaphor that needs to be engraved in you. Life is a fight, not a dance. Therefore, embrace the philosophy of resilience. Say to yourself, "I can fall, but I will not give up. I can stumble, but I will not abandon. I can fail, but each failure will be fuel to become stronger." This is the mentality that destroys the power of relapse. Because when the mind realizes that you never give up, addiction loses its greatest weapon, the fear of falling. And now reflect, what would happen if, instead of punishing yourself for each mistake, you used each mistake as resilience training? How many years of slavery could already have been broken if you had learned to get up faster? The answer can completely change the way you face the future. The power of immediate restart. One of the most common mistakes after the fall is to postpone the restart. The man falls and thinks, "Tomorrow I'll start again," or then, "Monday will be different." This postponement seems harmless, but it is one of the greatest poisons of discipline. Because the more you postpone, the more the brain gets used to procrastination, the more addiction gains space. The truth is simple and hard. The only moment to restart is now. The immediate restart has a profound impact on the mind. When you decide to get up on the same day, you teach the brain that there is no room for the "what's the point?" You show yourself that the fall does not define your identity, only your last step. And if the last step was wrong, the next one can be right. It's a powerful logic. Each minute can be the line that separates slavery from freedom. From a psychological point of view, restarting immediately is a way to train resilience. You don't let yourself sink into the spiral of guilt. On the contrary, you transform guilt into a trigger for action. By acting quickly, you cut the chemical cycle of relapse. The brain expects you to remain lying down, weak, surrendered. When you get up and act, you create a biological surprise. This shock is like a reprogramming. The system learns that the end is not the end, but a new beginning. From a spiritual point of view, the immediate restart is an act of courage. It is declaring to yourself, "I am not my mistake, I am my decision to get up." It is exactly here that the greatness of a man is measured, not in the number of falls he avoided, but in the speed with which he gets up after each one. Think of a soldier wounded in battle. He can stay on the ground bleeding, lamenting the blow, or he can get up, staunch the wound, and continue fighting. The difference between the two destinies is not in the blow, but in the reaction. You also have this choice. Pornography may have hit you today, but you can decide that today will be the day to get up. There is also the practical aspect. Each day that you wait to restart is one more day lost. More time spent feeding a cycle that only sucks energy. On the contrary, each immediate restart preserves previous victories. If you stayed clean for 10 days and fell on the 11th, don't throw away the 10 days. Restart immediately and carry that accumulated strength forward. Progress does not disappear. It only disappears when you decide to give up. This immediate restart can be symbolized in small gestures: getting out of bed, taking a cold shower, tidying up the environment, writing in a diary, going for a walk, praying. Each gesture communicates to the body and mind: we are back. Don't wait for perfect motivation. Act, even weak. Motivation is born from action, not the other way around. And now I want to leave you a simple challenge. If you fall, will you restart in the same minute, or will you wait days? This answer defines more than you imagine, because in the minute you get up, the relapse ceases to be defeat and becomes training. Call to perseverance. If there is one truth that needs to be engraved in your mind, it is this: the journey is not a straight line. It is full of curves, falls, returns, and advances. The mistake of many men is to believe that victory only happens when there is no failure at all. This ideal of perfection is a cruel illusion, because when reality arrives, when the fall happens, they believe that everything is over, and so they give up. But victory does not belong to the perfect. Victory belongs to the persevering. Perseverance is what separates the man who remains a slave from the one who conquers freedom. It is continuing to walk when the legs hurt. It is getting up when everything inside you screams to give up. It is facing each fall as one more proof that you are still on the battlefield. And being on the field is already victory, because the truly defeated is the one who dropped the sword and left. In the fight against pornography, perseverance means refusing the role of victim. It means saying, I am not defined by my last failure, but by my next decision. Each day of resistance, however small it may seem, is a brick placed on the wall of discipline. And each time you get up after falling, you reinforce that wall. Time builds fortresses that relapse cannot tear down. The Stoics always taught that the greatness of a man is not in never failing, but in never abandoning the fight. Seneca said that a man is great not because he never falls, but because he never lets himself remain fallen. This phrase should echo in your mind whenever you feel the weight of relapse, because as long as you continue to get up, victory is still in your hands. Perseverance also destroys the myth of lost time. Many say, I threw away weeks of effort, but no effort is lost. Each clean day left marks on your body, on your brain, on your soul. Each resistance strengthened your mental muscle. The fall does not erase this. The fall only interrupts. What you built remains, and you can continue from where you left off. Think of a warrior who goes through a long campaign. He can stumble, he can get hurt, he can even retreat. But as long as he keeps walking, the war is not yet lost. You are also on campaign. Addiction is insistent, but your perseverance needs to be even more insistent. Therefore, today, I invite you to abandon the obsession with perfection and embrace the discipline of perseverance. It doesn't matter how many times you fell. What matters is how many times you chose to get up, because that choice is the essence of freedom. And now reflect, are you willing to walk, even stumbling? Are you willing to start again as many times as necessary until you are completely free? The answer to these questions defines whether you will be just another prisoner or a free man. The fall as war training relapse is not defeat. It is a battle scar. It is a mark on the shield. It is a scratch on the sword. It is a bruise on the body. Each time you fall, addiction whispers that it's over, that you weren't born to win, that it's not worth continuing. But I say, each fall is just another war training, because discipline is not measured in the absence of stumbles, but in the decision to get up every time the dust covers your face. Think of a soldier on the battlefield. He runs, fights, resists, but at some point he is knocked down by a blow. The ground is hard, the pain is real, the blood runs. In that instant, he has two choices. He can remain fallen, handing victory to the enemy, or he can rise, even wounded, with a firm look, sword in hand, ready to continue. What makes him a warrior is not never falling, but always getting up. You also have this choice. The fall is not a sentence. The fall is instruction. It shows where your defense is weak, where your routine has loopholes, where your mind still believes in lies. Each time you get up, you are more prepared than before. Each failure is a map. Each pain is a lesson. And if you have the courage to see it that way, the relapse ceases to be a current and becomes training. The Stoics knew this. Epictetus said that it is not the weight of the blow that defines the man, but the way he reacts. Marcus Aurelius wrote to himself, "The obstacle is the way." They did not flee from failures, but used them as the academy of the soul. You can also do the same. Transform the fall into a gym of discipline, into a school of perseverance, into a training camp. And there is something even deeper. Each time you get up, you send a message to addiction. You don't control me. Addiction may even knock you down, but it cannot prevent you from getting up. It can delay your walk, but it cannot cancel your destiny. Because destiny belongs to those who continue, not to those who give up. And here I want to speak directly to your heart. How many times have you already believed that you had no more strength? How many times have you fallen and thought that you would never get out of this cycle? How many times have you destroyed yourself with cruel thoughts, calling yourself weak, useless, lost? Well, today I tell you, you are not weak because you fell. You are strong because you are here, listening, seeking, getting up. The weak has already given up a long time ago. You, no. The fall is part of your story, but it is not the end of it. Each scar you carry can be transformed into a war medal. Each stumble can be a reminder that you are still on the field. Each error can be rewritten as a step towards victory. And now I want you to do something simple but powerful. Subscribe to this channel. This series is not just content, it is armor. Each episode is one more piece of your protection, one more sword in your hand. Without it, you fight alone. With it, you fight accompanied. And I want you to leave in the comments the word Day 20, not only as a mark on the calendar, but as a public declaration. I continue, no matter how many times I fall. Write in capital letters, as if it were a cry echoing in the midst of battle. Because each comment of yours is like a shield raised alongside other warriors. And never forget, relapse is not defeat. It is just another battle scar on the way to victory. And that was the video I prepared for you. But the war does not end here. The next episode is already appearing on your screen now. Click and continue marching with me. Because each step taken after the fall is one more proof that you were born to win.